walking through the grocery store on my own for the first time ever, and I'm pushing along this cart, and I realize I don't know what to get. So I'm trying to figure out what my mom would normally get. I'm trying to figure out the familiar brands, and as I'm pulling down these boxes that aren't the brands that we would normally get, I start to see a couple common labels. I see GMO-free, antibiotic-free, organic, another GMO-free, another GMO-free, and it got to a point where I was like, okay, these chicken cutlets do not have GMOs in them. I know that. So it got me thinking. Well, someone like me who has grown up in the agriculture industry and has been blessed with the education that FFA and agriculture education has provided me, well, I understand what these labels mean and that some of them are just untrue. That doesn't mean that everyone does. For the consumer whose only interaction with the agriculture industry is through the grocery store, these labels can form a misconception about the agriculture industry. That labels like GMOs, things that are supposed to help the agriculture industry provide for the next generation, they think that these things are negative, that they are bad for them, that they are bad for consumers. Now, this is a big issue in the agriculture industry because if we do not educate our consumers about agriculture and about GMOs as well as other issues, we will not be able to fully educate our consumers and we will not be able to bridge the gap between consumers and agriculturists. You see, consumers believe that things like GMOs are bad for them because they see these food labels that say that things are GMO-free, so obviously they must be better for them, right? That's totally wrong. But why is this harmful exactly? If consumers continue to have a negative connotation towards things like GMOs, antibiotics, hormones, and the word non-organic, it will lead to negative connotation towards the agriculture industry and the technologies that it's using. The disconnect between consumers and agriculturists that we already see today will only grow if we don't do something to stop it. Now, the first thing that we can do is work with our local policymakers. These policymakers, they advocate for agriculture. They care about consumers. They care about farmers, too. If we are able to make them see this issue and this concern, we can change the way that food is labeled. We can make sure that consumers know what they're actually eating. We can make sure that companies do not try to trick consumers into thinking that a food is better just because it has a certain label on it. Because we all know here, that just isn't the case. In fact, 52% of consumers don't know what a GMO is. They don't know that a genetically modified organism is simply something that has been modified to serve a better purpose. Not that it's been modified for technically higher productivity, not that it's bad for them. They just hear the word genetically modified and they freak out. I mean, if I didn't grow up in the agriculture industry, I would also freak out. I mean, I don't want something that's been genetically modified, but I know that these things serve a better purpose. If we continue on the trend towards this, it will lead to the detriment of the agriculture industry. But because of the trends of amplified consumer interest, we can do something about it. Another thing that we can do to solve this issue is simply by educating our consumers. If consumers know where their food comes from, how it's produced, and why we do the things that we do and the technologies that we use, we will be able to serve our consumers in a better way than ever before. Because consumers will not only know what they're eating, but they will know where it comes from. They will know who produced it and how that food was grown. 28% of consumers don't know the official list of crops that are classified as GMOs. This leads to a huge issue in the agriculture community because consumers don't know that those strawberries, they aren't actually supposed to be GMOs. When they see a sign for GMOs, they should know what that means. They should know that just because something says non-GMO does not mean that that crop actually is a genetically modified organism. See, misleading food labeling, it leads to a host of issues beyond just consumer misconceptions. It can lead to the detriment of the agriculture community because consumers will continue to have backlash against the methods that they are using to produce their food. And by educating consumers and working with policymakers, we will be able to make a difference. We will be able to educate our consumers, and we will be able to communicate with our consumers and have a better understanding between each other and continue to forge a bridge between the agriculture industry and our consumers. Thank you.
Emily, congratulations on making it to this point. Can you give me an example of maybe a misconception that you've seen and how you've advocated or taught somebody who believed that misconception?
Okay, so this actually came very recently of a time where I was able to advocate towards somebody I never thought I'd be able to. It actually came, I was visiting a hospital where a family member was staying after a surgery, and she really wanted me to meet this nurse. I mean, apparently this guy was just the greatest thing since sliced bread, and she just wanted me to meet this guy. So I walk over and he introduces himself, and he's going to the same college that I'm going to. So we start talking, and he asks me, he knows I'm into agriculture, so he asked me, I saw this documentary about how food is grown, and what is a GMO, and should I be concerned? And so I was able to educate this random nurse in a hospital about the agriculture industry and how agriculture is actually helping the food insecurity issues of today, because we are using genetically modified organisms to enhance our food and make it better and more productive for the future. All right, thank you so much. Cake. This trend recently took the internet by storm, even prompting a Netflix show of the sort. Although we all know Netflix is about making any money they can, so I'll let you decide if you think this decides the size of the trend. Real versus Cake brought in extremely talented bakers to do their best to replicate real objects, where people would then guess which one was real and which one was cake. Sounds crazy, right? I mean, who would get the two mixed up? Well, me and millions of others couldn't tell the difference. As trends change, the internet has begun to play a different game. Real versus AI. Yes, livestock producers, I know it's confusing, but this AI is artificial intelligence. Generators create images based on prompts as people do their best to guess if it's real or fake. I sure hope no one decides to add cake into that mix. Wait, no one tell Netflix I just said that. But believe it or not, while many picture this agricultural industry to be wildly traditional, artificial intelligence has been guiding our field for nearly 20 years. As one company named Intellius recently reported their $1.7 billion 20-year anniversary. But our AI isn't playing these games of real or not. It's creating sustainability. It's feeding America. Currently, there are hundreds of AI technologies, both new and experimental, for agriculturalists. If you have crops, surely you'll recall riding around with Dad on the back of a gator spraying weeds. Now, what if someone, or rather something, could save you from those nasty sunburns? Enter drones. Computer vision can see millions of images to detect weeds, disease, pests, and rot, and then trigger the drone to spray pesticides, or even in those happier cases, fertilizer. AI has been used to detect apple black rot, eliminating its spread by over 90% and presenting the same accuracy with other diseases, saving many orchards profits. And soil sensors, I once wrote an entire essay on these, and they're just as crazy. They connect their data to the producer's computer, measuring soil moisture and pH levels. They even have the capability to activate your irrigation systems, watering only the exact amount needed. More advanced sensors even have the capability of connecting to local weather stations and services to calculate predicted rainfall so your crops will never go over or under watered. Some people fear AI will bring the apocalypse, but this one looks like terrifyingly well-watered crops, right? But what about people like me? The livestock producers? Well, I have just the thing for you. One program, Cattle Eye, uses data on your herd to monitor their health and can even make recommendations for dietary adjustments. And this one's even cooler. Recently, a pair from my home FFA chapter placed second in the nation for their agri-science fair project with the University of Kentucky professor using Cow Manager. Shameless plug, I know. But this program operates within ear tags to compare the behavior of cows to the perceived normal to indicate when they will calf. Cow Manager correctly predicted the calvings of 21 out of 23 of these heifers, meaning farmers would never have to deal with the crazy schedules of their moody heifers again. Artificial intelligence has become the core of precision agricultural industry. AI carefully applies water, fertilizer, and pesticides to preserve resources and save the money of producers. It also allows them to glean more profit from the higher yields of sustainably produced crops. But many of the downfalls prevent farmers from doing more than tapping their toes into the water. This equipment is expensive. Intellias, that $1.7 billion market I mentioned earlier, they predict $3 billion of increase in the next 5 years alone. That means they're making profits from that pricey equipment. Buy a $7,000 drone to water your crops. Try tagging your whole cow herd with $30 a piece tags. Buy a soil sensor that can run up to $1,000 and now fill your every field. Just like any other bit of farm equipment, this is an investment. Farmers may need training to use these products or may even be reluctant to try. Buy in increments just like good old combine payments, which I'm sure we're all quite used to. Try just a few soil sensors, see how they work. Wait for Cow Manager or drones to become more common as the prices go down and knowledge of them increases. Take these experimental products as investments, one step at a time. So maybe in the next decade, artificial intelligence will be on many more farms. But for now, I'm taking it one step at a time to figure out which one is cake and which one isn't. AI can come later when we can all work together to figure that one out. Thank you.
Reagan, great job. Congratulations on making it to this point. Thinking about AI, do you see it as an opportunity to either help solve employment issues in agriculture, or is it going to be a concern of taking people's jobs?
Honestly, yes. When artificial intelligence is mentioned in many industries, people see Toyota factories like the one we have in Georgetown, where computers are going to be putting those parts together, putting those cars together themselves. However, as I mentioned at the end of my speech, people need training in order to properly use these products. People need to develop these products, and as they're experimental, we constantly need new technologies, new knowledge of these research. So I feel like as many people are concerned about it taking away jobs, farmers are overworked and underpaid, and artificial intelligence will not only open new jobs in precision agriculture for these training positions and these production positions to help farmers out in gaining knowledge of their new artificial intelligence, but I feel that it won't be taking jobs. It'll be helping our overworked farmers get easier and higher profits because they're not having to work so hard by themselves. They don't have to manually spray these weeds. They can watch the drone do it.
If you were to use artificial intelligence on your farm, what would you use?
Obviously, as I mentioned just briefly, I am a livestock producer. While we do specialize in equine, I take particular interest into this University of Kentucky Cow Manager because I have spent many sleepless nights. Even last year, right before state convention, I had been up for 56 hours because I had been foaling out horses. Now, if we could take this experimental Cow Manager application and we could put it on my horses, do you know how many nights I would save where I could finally get some sleep? I think especially because taking every hour shifts where I'm in school, my dad has work at 4 a.m., it's really hard on us. But if we can take this cow manager and expand it, personally, putting that on my horses would be my favorite thing because I would never miss a foaling and I would be able to understand that this is also an advancement for our industry as a whole, but for me, it's a little extra sleep. Okay, thank you all so very much.
All right, great job, Reagan.
Good. Lights, camera, action. In 1888, Louis Le Prince was the first person to ever produce a motion picture film. It lasted a whopping 2.11 seconds. That's crazy to think about whenever you compare it to Zack Snyder's most recent cut of Justice League, an action-packed film spanning over 4 hours. The cinematography industry has continued to grow and develop since Louis' first premiere back in 1888. Similarly, the agricultural industry has continued to innovate and create since their first premiere of the riding plow in 1863, known as the Hawkeye cultivator. The riding plow was not only a vital stepping stone for Southern agriculture during the Industrial Revolution, but can still be seen today, instilled in the traditions of the FFA. The agricultural industry has continued to grow and create through precision agriculture and modern farming techniques. The riding plow no longer just serves as a symbol of labor and tillage of the soil, but shows us where we have been and where we are going. In an economy such as the one we have today, it is important to prioritize new and current marketing resources in order to better the income and profitability of farms. With fluctuating commodity prices and rising inflation, now is the time more than ever. But first, we must understand, what is profitability? Profitability is defined as the difference between the value of farm goods produced and the cost of resources used. There are 4 ways to measure profitability. The first, the rate of return on assets, otherwise known as ROA. The second, rate of return on equity, otherwise known as ROE. The third, the operating profit margins ratio. And finally, the fourth, being the asset turnover ratio. ROA, or rate of return on assets, includes the net income of the farm as well as all farm assets. The higher the ROA, the better your income and profitability will be for your farm. ROE also includes your net income and all farm assets, but we also add in the farm liabilities and take that into account. Similar to ROA, the higher the ROE, the more profitable your farm will be. A higher profit margin ratio means that the farm's ability to efficiently convert revenue into operating profits is much higher, therefore contributing to the good over overall farm profitability. And finally, the asset turnover ratio. The higher the rate, the more efficient assets are being used to generate revenue. Now that we better understand profitability and the 4 ways that it affects the farm, we must learn how to properly apply current marketing resources to better farms' incomes and profitability. I want everybody to do me a favor. Reach into your pocket, look at your wrist, look into your backpack. Tell me what you find. Cell phones, Apple Watches, computers. Otherwise categorized modern technology. Modern technology, and technology in general, is the way of the future and has a whole span of marketing resources that we as farmers and agriculturalists can use to our benefit. With technology and internet access, we can get outside of our local communities or state communities and go global. With different Facebook groups that takes together people's likes, hobbies, lifestyles, and jobs, you can connect with others in the same fields as you or interested in the same aspects as you and learn from them. Not only are you able to learn how to make your farm more profitable, you can also use it to market yourself and let people know all about you. By connecting with other producers, we can learn from one another and therefore increase our profitability and income by learning new methods. Other marketing resources to increase profitability include educational outreach. Work with local FFA chapters or the 4-H is a great way to get connected. Within my own personal FFA chapter, we take a weekend out of the year during Christmas break and come in and visit our sponsors. We recognize that we can't do the work we do within our chapter without them. Sponsors not only are able to uplift their community, they're able to market themselves and what they do within our community. From there, chapter members are able to develop interpersonal relationships with these sponsors that carries on after we put away the blue jacket. Educational outreach is a stepping stone to not only agricultural advocacy, but helping yourself better your farm. By interacting with the consumer-based side of your community, you're able to learn the consumer supply and demand within your local community. From interacting with your community, you can learn what people want and bring that farm-to-table lifestyle into your community. Being in an industry like the agricultural industry has its ups and downs. They say you reap what you sow. What they forget to add is if you're lucky. And in an industry like ours, where we're the 2% feeding the 100%, we can't rely on luck. That's why we must take use of these current marketing resources, connect with our communities, use educational outreach, and therefore help ourselves increase our farm income and profitability. Thank you.
Julie, congratulations making it to this point.
Thank you.
I'm curious, have you seen a good example of a farm that markets itself well? And if so, can you tell us more about why that is a good example in your opinion?
Yeah, so Hunt's Farms is about a mile down the road from my high school, South Warren High School in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and is a sponsor of my local FFA chapter. They have their sign, Hunt's Farm, right near the road that kids who go to my high school and middle school every single day drive past. Now, if you're not in the FFA, you might not know them as well. However, with the support that they give to my local FFA chapter, they've made a name for themselves, not only with our chapter, but with our advisors. From there, we've learned more about them and been able to develop interpersonal relationships with them. I know all about Mr. Hunt's little three-legged dog. That is the cutest thing you've ever seen. And that relationship right there shows you how sponsorships like that and the educational outreach marketing affects his business. From there, people who are in production agriculture within my school are more likely to reach out to him, as well as my local FFA promoting his farm through his sponsorship with us.
If you had your own business, how would you market it? What would be your first 2 ways of marketing your business?
Yeah, so the first step is going to be defining my demographic. Who am I marketing to? Who am I selling to? What do they want from me? Those are the questions I would begin asking myself. Once I find a baseline demographic that I would like to market to, I find out how my product separates itself from others. Is it bigger? Is it better? Is it more efficient? By doing that, I'm able to create a marketing plan that is unique to my business. I would then outreach to my demographic through whichever means is better. Usually with younger generations, you do see social media outreach working better. We see that a lot with TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. And if it was an older generation, I would find myself trying to partner up with well-established businesses. So to answer it in 2 steps, I would define my demographic and then separate myself through a unique marketing plan. Do you have any other questions? Thank you.
All right, great job, Julie.
My grandfather always told me that once in your life, you need a doctor, a lawyer, a police officer, and a preacher. But every day, 3 times a day, you need a farmer. After hearing that quote, I think we can all agree that it has some truth to it. Farmers have one of the most important jobs in the world, and I would argue the most depended on. Our farmers are tasked with the responsibility of feeding clothing, and keeping healthy our growing population, which has just recently surpassed 8 billion people. Now, with all of that responsibility on the farmers to provide, it is up to the agriculturalists and supporters and lobbyists to continue to improve upon trade agreements like the United States, Mexico, and Canada Agreement, the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, and even the United States and China Phase 1 Agreement. The United States, Mexico, and Canada Agreement was implemented on July 1st of 2020. This agreement was focused on modernization, applicability, and impartiality within trade. Its predecessor was NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. This agreement subjected farmers to unfair pricing schemes, unfair markets, harsh regulations, and even lack of profit. The new United States, Mexico, and Canada Agreement brought about new markets for ag products and commodities, and even improved the grading system by which we grade our products. The agriculture industry and farmers needed this new agreement to be able to keep up with all of the advancements that we see in our world. This agreement was expected at the time to bring about $65 billion in gross domestic products. And that increase was much appreciated by our farmers, especially during the time of the global pandemic. The Indo-Pacific Economic Framework was launched and agreed upon by 13 different countries to improve supply chains, expand our market access, promote sustainability practices, and even remove the tariffs upon our trade. 7 months before passing the United States, Mexico, and Canada Agreement, the United States entered upon and signed a Phase 1 agreement with China. China was signing to agree to purchase $80 billion of the United States agricultural products. In 2020, the United States was able to bring $27 billion from their agricultural products, and in 2021, that number only increased to $34 billion of products, such as corn, soybeans, sorghum, and wheat. Each of these 3 trade agreements was crucial to the success and the profits that farmers would bring. Many organizations and people, such as the Kentucky Department of Agriculture, Kentucky Farm Bureau, and even your senators and representatives, are just a few of the people working to promote and improve markets and production profits for farmers. Current cases with Mexico and Canada are working to improve and dispute biotechnology approvals and even Canada's regulations on the dairy industry. American Farm Bureau President Zippy Duvall stressed his appreciation by building upon the NAFTA agreement. This new United States and Mexico and Canada agreement would be able to be implemented and bring about better pricings and markets for farmers. He was excited to see the impact that these trade agreements would have on our farmers and farms. And he was educating people and encouraging the fact that these trade agreements bring about better support and sustainable ways for farmers to be able to reach their markets, because these markets are more stable with their resources even in unpredictable times. Because whether it's advancing agriculture with science, current agriculture issues, ag literacy, advocacy, marketing and international affairs, or by agriculturalists using their voice and ways to improve upon trade agreements, our farmers depend upon our advocacy just as much as we depend upon them. Like my grandfather always said, every day, 3 times a day. Thank you.
Lainey, congratulations making it to this point. I'm curious, we talk about these trade agreements, and it's a very global implications. So how can a rural farmer in Kentucky's voice be heard in these conversations?
Many different programs, like I mentioned, such as Kentucky Farm Bureau, are known as the voice of agriculture. These organizations reach out to their local farmers to help give them that voice to speak up on whether there are unfair markets within the corporations. Many of those problems that we see are within the meat industry. There's always something that we know is what's called as the Big Five. Those corporations are what control many of the markets. But organizations like Kentucky Farm Bureau help encourage their local farmers to reach out and advocate themselves. And even lobbyists are constantly working to improve not only trade agreements, but the regulations within our country themselves.
How important is it, do you think, for the average local farmer, say a grain farmer, to know where his products are going in the end? You know, or the chain of his distribution of his products is going.
We often see with farmers that their profits increase when there's a trust between the consumer and producer. So when the producer is able to know where their products are going, they're able to better market what they're actually selling. So their consumers are aware of the products they have and the information that is within, like the grain, whether the percentages of what they're growing or what nutritional value it would have within their byproducts. Many of the farmers that are growing these products and knowing where they're sending them to are able to also track whether one distributor is more profitable than the other, therefore being more effective in increasing their own profits.
All right, great job, Lainey.